How's it going? Welcome back to Dylan Pickup's blog. So we are on part 4 of our setup series. We have talked about neck relief. We have talked about saddle height. We have talked about nuts. And so now we're going to talk about what would really be the final step in our setup, and that is intonation. So before we get to the actual mechanics of how to set intonation on a guitar, we wanted to talk about well, first of all, what it really means and why and what's kind of involved in it. Okay, so because of the way a guitar is designed, when we have a string that is just sitting there tuned to, let's say, our low E, it's an E note, right? But the minute we fret that note anywhere, we are actually pulling that string down to the fretboard. And because of the nature of the construction of the guitar and the fact that there's a fret here and a fret here, and of course they get smaller as they go this way, so they're, you know, they're compensated for. It's all a mathematical design, right? But if we fret it at the second note, we are pulling at a different tension here than we are pulling if we set it fret it down here at the 17th. We pull it hard at a different tension from this direction versus this direction. Basically, the bottom line is intonation cannot be perfect at every note on every string all the time. It's inherent to the design of the guitar. It's just how it is. So if somebody says, well, I want my guitar perfectly intonated, it's not possible. Everything is a compromise. So this is why we do it last, because everything is a compromise. All the specs that you hear, so let's just run through a quick spec sheet on a guitar. Let's say 10 thousandths of neck relief, and 20 thousandths off the first fret for your nut height, and 2 millimeters at the bridge, or at the 17th fret for the saddle height. All those measurements, the ones I just gave you, actually those are kind of the middle of the road setup measurements for a Telecaster. Okay, those are actually in a book. And the guitar plays pretty good. Okay, but any one of those measurements being changed is going to change our intonation. Why is that? Well, if we have more neck relief, so let's just exaggerate this by putting some neck relief in this same drawing, then that means the distance from the string to the fret, the top of the fret, has changed, and now we have to pull it further. Okay, so that's going to change our intonation. Also, if we change the height of where the string goes into the nut from 15 thousandths to 20 thousandths, or 20 thousandths to 30 thousandths off the first fret, that is also going to change how far we pull down on the string to get to the fret. That's why with a really tall nut, the first 3 or 4 frets, probably 5, could be a little bit off if the nut is really tall. Same thing down here. If we choose to have really high action down here at the bridge, then our higher frets are going to be harder to intonate or keep in tune, or, you know, or they will be out of tune slightly, because we have to pull on them so hard to fret the note. Also, if we have worn frets, same thing, we're pulling that note further away from that perfectly tuned open E. So that means that everything on the guitar is a compromise. And I heard somebody say yesterday that, well, my guitar has fatter tone because it has higher action. Well, if you're eliminating any kind of buzzing or fret buzzing by getting your action higher, I can see that being the case. But when a string is vibrating in thin air at A440, it's going to vibrate at A440 at the same rate as if it's 5 thousandths off the neck versus if it's 10 thousandths off the neck, or off the first fret, period. It's not going to make any difference in the tone unless you're trying to get a rattle out of there. If you're trying to get a rattle out of there, yeah, it definitely makes a big difference. So those are all factors, and that's really, you know, that's really why we leave this for last, because everything that we do to the guitar changes it. Changes the intonation, because we're changing string lengths, we're changing the height from the fretboard, all of that stuff changes it. String height is a big one. People will grab their guitar and say, oh, I'm just gonna fix my action really quick. Well, if you raise your string height, then you've changed the length of the string, because it's now going further over the top, right? If you change your neck relief and you put more in it, you've changed the entire length of the scale of the guitar, okay? So just remember that every time. String tension is another thing. People don't realize that the lower the string tension, so if our E string is, let's go back to this because we're going to use this drawing in a minute anyway. So let's say we have our E string here, and this is our E note, and we play it open and it's E. If we lower the tension of this string and change nothing else, it is going to need to be compensated for that. If you try, the intonation will be off. So if you try this, play your open E, check your intonation at the 12th fret, lower it to a D, and check it again. It will be different. You didn't change anything except for the tension of that string, okay? Theoretically, on a minute scale, you probably change the backbone of the neck a little bit, but it probably one string is not going to make a difference. But the tension of the string changed and your intonation changed. So here's how this works. We're going to say that this is, and am I in the middle? Okay, basically, the 12th fret. If this is our E string, our low E, then at the 12th fret we're going to play an E note one octave higher. And this is, let's call this 25.5 inches for our scale. Okay, just for a very common scale length, and this is exactly half of that. Okay, so here we have 25.5 inches, we have exactly half. Now, how do we rough in? So let's say we're starting completely from scratch intonation. How do we rough it in? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to measure from the inside edge of our nut right here to the top, not to the side, to the top very middle of our 12th fret. Okay, so the crown of the fret, the very top of the crown of the fret, to the inside of our nut. Now here's where we talked about yesterday in nut stuff. If our nut's not right, if it's worn, if it's got a little round edge, the measurement's not going to be right, so the nut has to be right. So measure from here to here and figure out and write that measurement down. And then you're going to take this measurement and you're going to go straight from here to the very last contact point on our low E, okay? And we're going to make that measurement, for a rough in measurement, we're going to make that measurement the same as the one from the 12th fret to the nut on the low E string. And then because as our tension changes on our diameters of string, we're going to go, we're going to set this next A string forward. Now, for purposes of our illustration here, we're going to use 10s on this guitar, but this applies to any string gauge. So if we use, we have 46 here, we'll probably use a .036 on our A. So set that one 0.036 forward of our E. On our D, set this one 0.026 forward of our A. Now when we get to our G, we're going from a wound string to a non-wound string, and the tension stuff, it completely changes. It doesn't change a ton, but it does change. So, because most of the tension is carried by the core, so, but it does change. So, kind of a, and this is not, none of this is rocket science. This is just kind of a way to get us in the ballpark. Kind of an easy thing to remember is just line your D up, or your G up, with your A. Okay, and what that'll do is it'll give you an angle like this, and then it'll give you another angle like this, right? Then from your G, what is this going to be? This will probably be what, a 13. Set your B string 13 ahead of your G, and then set this one 10 ahead of your E. That will get you in the ballpark. It probably will not be on, but it will get you in your ballpark. Retune everything. First of all, yeah, tune this to a pitch before you measure it. Then retune everything to pitch. It'll probably It'll tune to pitch when it's open, and then fret your note on every string at the 12th fret, one at a time. And when you fret that note, when it comes down to the fret, just enough to make contact with the fret. Don't pull it. Don't pull it down. You know, don't pull the string down into the fret area. Pull it just down to touch the top of the fret and make the note clean. If you pull it too hard, you can actually you'll watch it on your tuner. It'll move it. So just enough to fret the note. You want your low E at the 12th fret to be an E note 1 octave higher. Okay? Use an accurate tuner. It is said that, let's see, 10 cents, which is 1/10 of a semitone, which is 1/10 of a fret, okay, is what we can hear the difference between two notes when they're played consecutively. Okay? Now that is probably true for most people. There are probably a lot of people though that are familiar with guitars and music that can hear things closer than that, maybe. But the important thing is that you can hear one note off a 10 cents, but when you play two notes together you can really hear it. So when you play a chord, if it's off, in fact, do this, have this all in tune, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, it's in tune. It sounds good when I play E, A, D, G, B, E. It all sounds in tune. Now go ahead and go up to your second position E and play that. It'll probably sound out of tune before you set all this. Because when you hear more than one note at a time that is out of tune with each other, you can tell the difference more. I like to get a tuner that is accurate to 1/10 of a cent. That is really, really, really accurate, and it's beyond what you can hear the difference. The tuner that I have is a Peterson, and it goes down, I think, 10 times that. So it's really, really accurate, but you know, those things are hundreds of dollars. 1/10 of a cent will get you, and I think I have another tuner. I think it's like a Korg. I forget what it's called. So it's a Korg Black something. Anyway, I only paid like 50 bucks for it. And in its simulated strobe mode, it goes down to 1/10 of a cent. And I have compared it to my Peterson, and I would say that it is acceptable. You can get it down close enough to where you won't be able to tell, and the guitar will sound like it's intonated. So do it one string at a time. Tune it to an open E. Tune the tension is important, so make sure that you tune the thing completely. And then check it at your 12th fret. Now, and then do the same thing with your A, same thing with your D, G, B, and E individually. Every time you move this thing, tune the thing back to pitch again. If you do not, you'll never get it right. Okay? So tune the E, check it at the 12th fret, move the saddle a little bit, check it again, tune it, and then check it again. Now everybody always gets confused. Do I shorten it? Do I lengthen it? Is it flat? What am I doing? This is actually not that difficult. Make this super, super easy. Here's your tuner. Here's flat. Here's sharp. Alright? So, if you tune your E and it's perfect, and then you fret it at the 12th fret and it's flat, the needle of the tuner moves this way, or the indicator of the tuner moves this way, that's the direction you move your saddle. Whichever way the tuner goes away from where you want it, that's the way you move it. So if it's sharp, that means the needle moves this way, move the saddle that way. If it's flat and it needs to move and the needle moves this way, then move the saddle that way. That's all there is to it. Super simple. Go one string at a time. This is going to take some time. Just be patient and you'll get it right. Okay? If you do this and the tuner is, you know, fairly accurate, and I mean, shoot, if you could even do it with like a snark or something. It won't be 100. It won't be. It's better to have a better tuner. I'm just going to say that. But you could even do it with a snark. And anything that's out that bugs you, you'd probably be able to catch with something like a snark. It might not be 100% super accurate to what we want it forever, but you can identify problems and fix them relatively acceptably with even a $20 snark. So just remember that. As accurate a tuner as possible. If the needle goes this way, move the saddle that way. If the needle goes this way, move the saddle this way. Be super patient, take your time, tune it in between every adjustment, and your guitar will be properly intonated as much as reasonably possible. And if it is not for some reason, and let's say you do all these adjustments, and you play the thing, and you're like, man, this certain part of the neck, it just doesn't sound right. Then chances are you either have a worn nut, your saddle height is too high, your nut height is too high, or your neck relief is too high. If you have a lot of tuning problems, if your chords sound out of tune down here at the nut end, it's possible that your nut is too high. If you go above the 12th fret, even after all this stuff is set, and it just really starts to fall off as you go up towards the 20th fret, it's probably that your saddle height is too high. If you feel like you just can't get it, check your neck relief too. That is why you do all this stuff in a particular order. Neck relief first, saddle height, nut height. Once the nut height is adjusted, when we're doing it from scratch, I always go back and check my saddle height so that everything is right. And then intonation last, because all those things affect it. If you can't get it right, and you're certain that the parts are all in the right place, like your bridge is in the right place and your nut is in the right place and all that stuff, and you still can't get it, go back to your neck relief, check it. And when people say, oh, I play with high action on purpose, remember that that is a compromise. The higher your action, the more you're going to pull away from perfect pitch as you play your guitar on different areas of your neck. So if you like a high nut, then you're going to have to compromise with the fact that you're going to give up some intonation quality down here at this part of the neck. If you like to play with high action down here at the 12th to the 24th because you play really hard and you jam on the thing and play a super fat pick, then you have to be able to compromise the fact that you're going to give up a little bit up here from, you know, like the 14th to the 20th fret, okay? There's a reason why those standards are there. Now, obviously they're variable and we can make them whatever we want, but just remember that because of the way the guitar is designed, you're going to compromise on something if you favor one of those factors over the other. If you set it up really, really balanced with nice low nut action and a average to low saddle height, and you know, like a 5/1000 to 10/1000 depending on your fret quality, neck relief, then your intonation overall will be closer because you're not pulling as far on the strings. So it's all a compromise. Speaking of compromises, let's talk real quick after I pick up my eraser about one of the big things that people go on and on and on about, and that is Telecaster bridge saddles, because they think you cannot intonate them, or they are hard to intonate. Either the thing's in tune or it's not. There is no it's hard to intonate. Either the guitar's in tune or it isn't. Okay? So but again, all this stuff is a compromise, okay? Remember that because of the string tension, that drawing that we just drew just now was in a direction like this. And this string is further back, so this would be our EAD, is further back than our G. Notice that your G is here and your D is here. What you really would want is this one to sit further back from this one. A compensated saddle will do that because it will fix it like this instead of having a round one where they're both the same. If you have a round one and you don't want to put a compensated saddle on it for tone reasons, you can actually bend this screw right here and you can twist it to make a little bit of a difference. that is a thing. If you don't want to bend it, you can put a compensated saddle in there. That's probably the biggest area where you're going to see it, is between the D and the G string. But again, it's all a compromise. Also remember this, the 20 thousandths at the fret up here and 2 millimeters here at the 17th, it's pretty high. I mean, it's a standard for a Telecaster, but that's from the friggin' 40s. So, you know, if you play with everything super high, then this will be more of a factor. If you can get your nut action lower, and there's ways to cheat it with a Telecaster. You can shim your neck heel and stuff like that and change the neck angle, and there's all kinds of things you can do. There are ways to intonate a Telecaster with this classic bridge. I use a compensated saddle right here, and this is my favorite bridge. Personally, I do not like contemporary bridges in a Telecaster at all whatsoever, and I would rather use a compensated saddle, and in that one position, if nothing else, and then intonate the guitar, and I can get it, you know, as dead on as you can get any guitar every time. You know, it's just a matter of setting it all up. Remember that everything is a compromise. You're like, well, I don't really like the way these sound compared to a barrel. Well, then you're gonna have to put up with it. You know, like I said, everything is a compromise. But there is a way, depending on what you want to compromise, to intonate one of those guitars. We use them on almost every Tele build, and I got guys playing them things all over the world, and nobody ever complains. So they do work. You just have to know that the higher the string is off the fretboard at any point makes this matter more. So if you can get that guitar more playable, this will matter a lot less. And that is a rule in intonation in general. The more playable the guitar is with the strings closer to the frets, the easier it will be, the more quickly it will be, and the more accurately we'll be able to intonate. So that's just how it works, man. That's pretty basic. Remember, follow your needle, tune in between every string adjustment, and it should be pretty cool. If you have any questions you want to add to our blog, any subjects, anything like that, contact us at DylanMcCurchie.com, at our blog, or at our Facebook page, Dylan Pickups, and ask anything you want, man. This has been a really fun series. We will do a summary probably tomorrow, and we're also going to do a special one on lower tunings, because we've been getting some questions about how does all this affect, how does all this, if I'm going to play a guitar and then all of a sudden tune it down a step, what do we have to do? The answer is all of this stuff over again, but we'll talk about it specifically in its own post. I hope you enjoyed this. Please contact me, say hi, send a message, whatever, and I hope you have a good day, and thanks for stopping by.